I've got a new daily driver which is replacing this Audi RS7 which I've had for quite a while now. It's actually very different to this RS7. See if you can guess what it is from this montage of clips. See that? Fly flew into my throat. I'm going to tell you exactly what car it is very shortly and give you a rundown on it. But before I do that, I want to tell you what I've liked and haven't liked so much about living with the Audi RS7. One of my very favourite things about this car is, of course, the 4-litre twin-turbo V8 that puts out 630 horsepower and 850 newton meters of torque. And because you've got quattro all-wheel drive and launch control, it will launch and perform in all weather. Audi says this car will do 0 to 60 miles an hour in 3.4 seconds. Let's see. Launch control. Skip sideways a bit. Blimey, it's brutal, this thing. 3.51. That's a bit of wheel spin. Let's try again. Less than 3.09. Now you might think that wasn't consistent, but actually most of the time this car has been very consistent in terms of its performance. This is what we've basically achieved out of it many times while drag racing it. Stay ahead! That's the thing about quattro. It does just deliver pretty much every single go. I'll tell you another way this car delivers, and it's nothing to do with the performance. The way it looks. The face looks really aggressive. I like the blacked out Audi badge and the carbon fibre bits of trim. Car looks great down the side as well. So you've got huge alloy wheels, 22 inches, more on those in a bit. Got some more carbon fibre effect here. But what makes this car look so good is this sloping roof line. Definitely stands out, and of course you've got the RS badging there. This car doesn't have the carbon ceramics. They were optional, but they weren't available when I took delivery of this car. But to tell you the truth, haven't used it on track, and it hasn't felt wanting it in terms of its stopping performance. The rear of this car is really cool as well. It's got a little pop-up spoiler, so as you go a bit quicker, this automatically pops up, but you can pop it up yourself if you want to pose. Put it back down. I prefer the sleek lines. This diffuser is a bit fake. I like the carbon fibre effect on it though. I do like the RS huge oval tailpipe, so if you look in there you'll see there's actually 2 pipes within and one of them's got a valve in it. So I'm going to open the valve now, so put the car into RS mode. Oh, look at that, you can really see the effect and hear the effect of it. Obviously there's one on each side as well, really, really nice. But when you're revving, give it some revs. There is a soft limiter, as with all Audis. Sounds awesome when you're driving, more on that in a bit. Now, one of the things I really like about this particular car, it was a good choice, was this paint. I haven't actually bothered to clean it much, but I've got to tell you, one thing about Audi RS models, they're the everyday performance cars, so it suits them being mucky like this. I'm going to prove it to you now. It's quite incredible how comfortable this car is when you consider its sporty pretensions, and the fact that it's riding on 22-inch alloy wheels. The adaptive dampers do a great job of ironing out the bumps in the road. You can almost forget it's the RS model. It's quiet as well. The road noise isn't intrusive. And you can really notice that when you're doing Bluetooth telephone calls, because people don't even know you're driving. They just think you're using your phone at home because it's just so quiet. Another thing that makes this car comfortable to drive is the fact you've got rear wheel steering. When you're trying to maneuver tight city streets, it means that this car is a lot more manageable than you might think for such a long vehicle. And there is one other thing which in particular makes this car super comfortable to drive at night. The daytime running lights on this car look really nice, but it's fitted with the Matrix LED headlights. So when you have the normal beam on, you can probably see the little dots there. This car can blank out part of its beam, so when you're driving down the road, not only are the lights really super bright, they don't dazzle oncoming drivers because they'll blank out part of their beam and then fill it back in again. And it really makes it super easy when you're driving at night, especially if you're older like me and your eyesight isn't quite as good as it was. Also, the high beam is insanely bright. So just whack that on, illuminates the whole road. It's a bit like turning on the sun, but obviously it's got an auto function, so it will switch off once again so you don't dazzle oncoming drivers, and it's back on again in a flash. But that isn't the only feature that's made this car super easy to live with. It's adaptive cruise control. This Vorsprung version of the RS7 gets it as standard, and I've used it so much. It'll do lane keeping assist, it'll keep you a safe distance from the car in front, it'll auto steer, it absolutely does the job, and you can drive through it. So if I accelerate a bit, it'll let me accelerate, and then it'll just pick it up again. The only way it disengages is if you dab the brake. It'll also work in stop-start traffic, and it will even just change the speed down automatically if you go into a lower speed zone. I love it. There's another thing about this car though that makes it a great place to do lots of miles in. Just the design is neat and tidy, the quality is good, seems very modern even though it's getting on a bit now. But my favourite thing about this performance version of the RS7, Alcantara on the steering wheel. It's a game changer. It just makes the car feel instantly more sporty to drive. It's kind of like a placebo effect. Speaking of which, if I press this button on the steering wheel to go into RS mode, and that sharpens everything up, the throttle responds, the gear changes, and it makes the suspension stiffer so the car stays flatter in the bends. What surprised me was the difference between RS7 and the RS7 Performance in terms of how engaging it is to drive. You know, people used to say, oh, Audi's, you know, one-trick pony, they can just accelerate in a straight line, they're no fun. But this thing really is. In the way it responds to your steering, and the way it feels thanks to that Alcantara, plus that rear axle steering making the car responsive and turn just quicker, more keenly than if it didn't have it, and the fact you've got a diff on the rear axle to send power to the outer wheel to help drive you around a corner. This thing is absolutely brilliant in the way that it combines comfort in one moment and then can be an absolute blast on a twisty road in the next. And of course you've got the benefit of that Quattro all-wheel drive system, which gives you plenty of traction to hammer out the bends. I mean, this thing is a monster. Considering the performance available, I don't think that Audi's claimed economy of 22.8 miles per gallon is all that terrible for such a car. However, what has it done in reality? You see, in the 7,000 miles that I've been running this car, it's averaged 22.7 miles per gallon, which isn't very efficient, but what do you expect? You know, it's a heavy car, it weighs over 2 tons, it's got loads of performance, and it's been used in a lot of drag racing. So that's brought this figure down. If you're on a cruise on the motorway, I've seen over 30 mpg from this thing, which is insane. And that kind of brings me on to the practicality of this thing. The RS7 is pretty roomy in the back. Knee room's good, headroom's good. Now you might be saying, Matt, you're not the tallest. Well, fair enough, but cameraman Adam is over 6 foot tall, so how much headroom you got? Oh, that's fine for Adam. Look, and what about knee room?
Yeah, all good.
Another thing I like, Isofix anchor points are really easy to get to. They are hidden under covers, but once you've removed them, so easy access, and there's plenty of room here. But my favourite thing is the fact there's also Isofix here on the front passenger seat, so if you want to, you can have your child next to you. However, here are a few things that haven't been quite so good about living with the RS7. Now, it might seem a bit odd, but one of the complaints I have about this car is the boot space. Well, not actually the space, it's the shape of the boot. So this lovely sloping tailgate does mean that the boot isn't very deep in these parts here, and that does limit what you can actually put in it. So an RS6 with its square boot is way more practical, even though the volumes aren't actually that different. And that's not all. You see, something that's a bit of a problem with the RS6 as well as this RS7 is the climate control. So it's on this secondary screen down here, and there's lots of buttons, and they are all just touchscreen buttons rather than actual physical buttons. You do have a sort of like vibrating effect when you press them, like your phone, but when you're driving along it can be a bit of a faff to get and do some of the things that you want to do. And if you want to go into in-depth on the climate, you have to press that button, and then you have these things up here such as sync. You know, if you accidentally touch one of these, it'll go into dual zone, then you need to go into that menu and into sync. Fortunately, you can use the gear lever to rest your hand on, but that brings you to another problem, and it's that the Alcantara can mark more than leather wood, and you can probably see some stainage there from slightly greasy palms. Speaking of which, this trim here, look, I've cleaned it and it's left a residue. It's smudgy, but I don't know if you can see there, it's also very prone to scratching, which is a bit of a shame. However, is that going to be a problem on my new car? Let's find out. And here it is, a new Skoda Kodiaq.
Oh! Ew! Dude! What the fuck?
Actually, it's not that. It's this car here. A Porsche Spyder RS. I've effectively gone from one arse to another. Anyway, let me tell you about this car. So it's just a 718 Boxster with an annoying manual roof that costs 3 times the price of the entry-level Boxster. Actually, there's so much more to this car than that. And the main thing is, of course, the engine. A normal 718 Boxster sounds like this. 4-cylinder turbo. Now you can get a Boxster GTS with a 4-litre flat 6, and that sounds like this. However, the Spyder RS gets Porsche's GT 4-litre flat 6 motorsport derived engine, and it sounds like this. That's because it's fitted with the same engine as this car. That's right, it's the Motorsport derived 4-litre natural aspirated flat six from the GT3 with individual throttle bodies. And do you know what? I actually think that you can enjoy it a little bit more on the road in the Sparta RS than in the 911 because of this bit here. It is the air intake. And it's right by your ear hole. It's just so good. It's one of the main reasons why I love this car. Just have a listen. The tone of the intake just changes depending on where you are in the rev range and the amount of throttle you got pressed. It's, you end up playing it like a musical instrument and using the paddles to change the note. The best part of the sound though is between 8,000 and 9,000 RPM though. You can only really experience it legally in either first or second gear. I'm going to go to second gear. I'm on a dual carriageway, so it's 70 mile an hour speed limit. I can just about get away with it here, listen. And you can't accelerate past it though, you have to come straight off. Just that bit, it is truly orgasmic. If I was in the normal 4-litre natural aspirated Spider, I wouldn't even be able to experience 8,000, 9,000 RPM with that engine if you could do it at legal speeds because the gearing's higher. This RS has lower gearing, the gears are closer stacked as well, which means that it's just a little bit more playful. You know what, I'm just going to wring it out slowly through the rev range. Do you know why? It doesn't get annoying either like the GT4 RS does. That seems to just reverberate a bit too much around the cabin when you're driving along normally. This doesn't seem to do that, maybe because there's less sound insulation from this fabric roof. Oh, what a noise. Tell you the truth, I don't ever really drive this car with the roof up. I always drive it with the roof down. That is a bit of a faff. And you do have to pull off the road to be able to take it down. Like I'm in some kind of dodgy lay-by here. Yeah. When I did the initial review on this car, it actually took me 13 minutes to take the roof down, but I have had some practice now. So I'm going to time it on my phone. All right, here we go. I'm going to start the clock now. There we go. Right, and obviously I've got to dodge, oh gosh, other users of this lay-by. So what do I do? What do I do? Open up the boot. Oh no, you can't open the boot because first I thought I'd done it. You have to unlatch these things. Sorry. It's one. Up. I mean, I'm not going to like rush like I'm in a race. I'm going to do it in the speed that it actually takes me when I'm doing it normally. I do always forget about having to unlatch those before unlocking the boot bit. So now I can press this and unlock the boot bit. Right. You've got to get your rolling right. You want it packaged nicely because it's got to all slot underneath this back end of the car. Then you get in here, look, up, and you press this button and you unlatch the roofy bit. And now I can lift it away. Whoa. You're constantly having to have a little readjust. Right, I thought this was going to be much quicker than it's turning out to be. I think we are. I think we're there. That is it. Okay, what was the time? I've got better. 6 minutes 39. It's actually quicker putting it back up. I'll show you a bit later in this video. There might be a secret Porsche way to do this that's even quicker, but the electric folding roof on a regular Boxster is just so much easier. Speaking of which, now let's time how long it takes to put the roof down. Admittedly an older first generation Boxster, but here we go. You ready? I'm gonna even just start it like now. Right, here we go. Press that button, lift that handle, press the button on here. And we're done. 18 seconds. And it's just as easy to put up, which is key when it rains, which happens a lot in the UK. Putting the roof back on the Spyder RS is a lot more hassle. Do you know what? If you could get the GT engine with the normal Boxster, I'd have that car, just for the ease of taking the roof down and up again. However, it won't fit in the normal Boxster because of the roof mechanism. The automated roof just is too big and cumbersome. You can't fit that engine in the space because it has a slightly larger and higher air intake than the standard engines that you get with the Boxster, and even the normal 4 litre. In fact, for this Spyder, Porsche had to redesign the roof mechanism ever so slightly for this engine. Also, I have to say that with the roof down, the Spyder does look better. Just this area here is so beautiful, isn't it? And you know what, it looks better with the roof up as well. It's quite a good looking design, that roof. It's just a bit of a faff. But at least there is one thing that's super easy to do on this RS Spyder. I'm now going to measure the oil. There's no dipstick, you do it all through the car's computer. So I just go to this menu here and then measure it. I'm at the minimum level. I can still drive it, it's fine, but I do need to top it up. In case you're wondering, that's where the oil goes in. I'll need less than a litre, maybe half a litre. And this car has done almost 10,000 miles now. It's quite normal for these engines to use a little bit of oil. So the Spyder RS is very similar in terms of its chassis setup as the GT4 RS. However, they've softened the spring rates and they've made the dampers more compliant to make it just easier to live with on the road. Driving this with the roof down is just a wonderful sensation. That noise. Oh, I'm going to turn the exhaust on, listen. Off. You can't really tell. I think it sounds better with it off. You just get pure intake. The only car I will ever say that about, that it's not worth having the exhaust button. I love convertibles. They're my favourite types of cars. A 911 I would never have in convertible form. The shape I just prefer as a coupe, but it really is the only car. This allows you to enjoy the best thing about the 911, which is that GT engine, but with the roof off. In fact, you can't get a convertible 911 with this engine. And the thing about this Spyder RS is just how much better it is on the road than the equivalent GT4 RS. I mean, really, what you want is this car behind me for this kind of road, a big pickup. Just look at it. Look at this crap. And considering this is a firm, focused RS model, it's not terrible over this, it's dealing with it. It manages to stay firm, but it's not absolutely bone shaking. And you probably noticed there the steering. In fact, I'll do it in a moment. I'm going to hold the steering like this and go over some really bad bits, and it doesn't really track or tramline. You can see it a little bit. This is quite undulating and uneven, this surface, but it's not like tugging me off the ditch, or, that sounds rude, it's not sending me into the ditch. A GT4 RS would be. And that means you can enjoy the car more of the time because it's not getting on your nerves quite as much. And so you're just free to get on with that. The Spyder RS has more aggressive aero than the standard Spyder, so you've got a more aggressive front splitter, and of course there's this notable ducktail spoiler, which is in some ways a bit overly large. However, all of this doesn't produce downforce like all the aero that you get on the GT4 RS. Instead, it's all designed to just give you zero lift. The handling of this car is just so good. The steering is sharp. It's not quite as responsive as a 911 GT3 or GT3 RS because you don't have the double wishbone front suspension nor rear axle steering. But I mean, it's responsive enough, and there's so much grip. The body stays super flat for the turns. I don't even have the suspension in its stiffest setting. There's no need on the road really, because that does impair the ride comfort, and there's hardly any lean at all. Another great thing about this car is that it gets Porsche's torque vectoring as well. So that really helps you just put the power down, and you can feel it driving you through the corner from the rear axle. Love that. Oh, and it works so well with this super responsive engine. I mean, there's no engine, I don't think, that has the throttle response of this thing. Brakes are lovely. Just so much feel to them. Very, very powerful. On the road, steel's probably better than the ceramics. But there is one reason why I would rather have the ceramics. See that? Brake dust. If you've got common ceramics, you don't really get any brake dust. With these normal steel brakes though, you do get lots of brake dust, so you're forever cleaning it out of the wheels. One thing I like about this Spider compared to my 911 GT3 RS is that it does feel smaller on the road. Sorry, I should say it doesn't feel quite as large or as intimidating on the road. I mean, actual dimensions, there's not really that much in it, but it's just a kind of sense you get with the wing and everything on the 3RS. It does just feel large. Oh, I'm also semi-glad I don't have the magnesium wheels, because I'm always super worried about damaging them, because they're £10,000 a set. That's when you spec it with the car, but I think if you have to replace one, it's something like £4 or £5 grand per individual wheel. The starting price of the Spider RS is £123,000. However, this one costs £138,000 because it's got £15,000 worth of options. I'll talk you through them now. We've got the Bose sound system, an absolute must, £917. To have the seat belts in red, it's £213. To have the door pulls in red, it's £120. Sports chrono pack, which I think on this particular car is just a stopwatch on the dash, £213. The front axle lift, can you guess how much that is? Actually, we've got a pinned comment. We're giving you 3 choices. Quickly vote by commenting. Right, you done it? You voted? Well, the correct answer is £2,013. But there's one very good reason why you'll want this option if you buy a Spider RS. Right, I'm just going to put that on. Don't think that was entirely necessary for there, but better to be safe than sorry. To be fair, I think if you don't have this option fitted to your RS of whatever kind, it can make them harder to sell on. Always get it. I mean, that was just a tiny speed hump, but you know, the more nasty ones that you sometimes encounter in car parks, you are gonna need it. Oh. But the most expensive option on this particular Spider RS is the Visac pack, which costs £9,390. For that you get exposed carbon fibre body panels on the door mirrors. You also get race text on the dash, I like that. You get the Visac badge there, and you get carbon fibre here, here, and this little carbon fibre gurney flap. And then if you want this a black and red contrasting colourage, £1,365. There are a few things that have annoyed me about this car. In addition to the roof, the fabric door pulls on my GT3 RS are actually quite easy to use. You like put your finger through them and pull. These, you kind of grab them like that and you lever it by pressing your elbow against the door, but it actually gives you RSI there. It really hurts after a while. So what I do now is this. To open this door, I don't use this hand, I go like that. That's how I do it. I've also noticed that this car kind of creaks from this dash area. I think it's the instrument binnacle. Can you hear it? Sort of does it like that when you're going over bumps and stuff. You don't hear it so much when you're obviously accelerating because of the noise from the air intake, or if you've got the roof down because of the wind buffeting. That's my excuse for driving with the roof down and going quickly all the time. Well, I can't really moan at this car's economy considering the performance from its lovely engine. You know, 20 mpg is actually all right. The issue is that it's got a 64 litre fuel tank, which in many cars will be fine, but with that kind of economy, it does mean that you're filling up quite a lot. Look, I've got 3/4 of a tank and it's saying 181 miles, which means you're getting a little bit of range anxiety, like with an electric car, though obviously with this being petrol, you can fill it pretty much anywhere. There seems to be a lot of condensation in this tail lamp. There's more on the other side. There's some in the front as well, but there's also some condensation elsewhere in the car, which is a bit bizarre. For some reason, there's condensation in my sports chrono clock. That's not great. Now, I'm sure you can get that sorted out under warranty, but By far and away the worst thing for me with this car is the infotainment system. You see, not only does it feel a little bit old-fashioned, it does not have Android Auto. It's only got Apple CarPlay. I'm an Android guy, so I've had to buy this thing, right? What you do, you slot it into the bit for the CD, tighten it up, and then I can fit my phone in there. Brilliant. Yeah, great. That is why, for me, the 911 is so much better, because at least it's got Android Auto. However, there is so much I love about this car. Porsche's GT division really want you to be able to play with their cars. That's why they've built in a clutch kick system to the PDK gearbox. So look, if I do this, pull both pedals, it'll go into neutral, I can rev the engine and then dump it. So much fun. It's also very practical because you've got two boots, one at the front, which is reasonably roomy, and another at the back. But the main thing is how exhilarating it is to launch from 0 to 60 miles an hour. I don't think my tyres are that warm, but let's give it a go anyway. Considering this road surface and reasonably cold tyres and the fact that the traction kicked in and it somehow still managed to seem quite smooth, I think that's all right. 3.59. It was loud. I'm almost deafened by it. Fly flew into my throat. That is one disadvantage of having the roof down. Now let's see how long it takes to put the roof back up. So I'm going to start the timer now. There we go. So that was much easier. The time was 3 minutes 35 seconds. So still quite slow, but it's worth it. Look how beautiful it is. I'm determined not to be beaten, so I'm going to try and take the roof down again and see if I can beat 6 minutes. So let's start. Four minutes, better, but still. Do you know what? I wouldn't have this over my GT3 RS. Reason being, the GT3 RS is the daddy of the RS cars, well, until the 2RS comes along. And I just wouldn't want to swap it because I prefer 911s. However, if I'm being truthful to myself, I think I get more pleasure out of driving this on the road than that car. And out of all the long-term test cars I've had over the years, this is my favourite. It beats the R8 Spider by a small margin. And it's funny, out of all the cars I've had, like more sensible, practical family cars, M5 CS, loads of performance, easy to live with, it's the more hardcore sports cars that I've enjoyed the most, and both of them have been convertibles.